Okay, good evening, everybody. So I will present you my case study or my practical tips a bit from my own experience. So my name is, I will have the same problem as you, I think. My name is Elke Spinnewyn. I started my career as a software developer, and then I became a consultant and a project manager. And currently I'm working as a freelance consultant and coach in mainly the IT industry. So how I became aware of psychological safety. So this evening I will guide you a little bit through my own career path, and I will also present you some practical tips and tricks what I did to implement this into the teams I worked with. So at one day in my 20s, I had to manage software projects and a team. I was a software developer. At one day, they gave me the role of a project manager, but actually I didn't know what I was doing. So what I thought I must do as a project manager, I thought, okay, I need to make project plans. I need to make sure that everything is written into detail. Every step, every action, I need to create this into a perfect plan. And I really needed to focus on the technical aspect of the project, on delivering technology, on delivering the software in a good way. I also thought that I needed to make sure to deliver the project no matter what. So to really make sure that we ended up with a good software project. And I also thought, okay, I need to give instructions to my colleagues, to the developers, to the other people I worked with, on what they needed to do and when I expected the result. So I thought, okay, by giving the right instructions, everything will end up in a good way. And I even followed an intense project management training. It was a one-year training with a pile of books. It was really like last year I moved houses and I took all those books with me, and I needed to laugh because it was a lot of books about how to create a good project plan, how to make lists of risks I saw in the projects. But surprise, there was nothing in those books about the people aspect in those projects. So it was a bit like, I felt a bit like, okay, giving instructions to people like, okay, please get the work done. So that was a bit how I did the role as project manager in my 20s. But guess what happened? Surprise, surprise. People didn't deliver what I expected. And the customer wasn't happy, of course, with the lack of results, of concrete results. So projects always took longer, or they will deliver it in another way, or with less features they expected. So they weren't happy. Projects were moving really slow. And people in the team, they didn't discuss their challenges together. Instead, they came to my office complaining about each other. And as a project manager, I really thought, oh no, what is happening? So, and the customer didn't understand us, and we didn't understand the customer. Of course, not in all projects. And people weren't working together as I expected. So my ideal dream of being a project manager, working together in a good way as a team and delivering great software products, it was a bit not as I had in my mind. And of course, a lot of other things. So this was a bit how my face looked at that moment. So I started looking for a magical solution. I was thinking, okay, instead of creating project plans, instead of creating all those lists with risk, and instead of writing code, etc., there is something else that's necessary to deliver great software products. I followed all kinds of trainings about personal development, about coaching, about working with people in the team. And that one day I discovered this man, and this man is Patrick Lencioni. And I read a quote of Patrick Lencioni, and this was the quote. And he said, "Not your expertise, not your operational excellence, not your strategic skills, but teamwork will be the ultimate competitive advantage for companies in the future. And when I read this quote, I thought, okay, we are trying to deliver a great product, we are trying to thrive with our expertise, etc. But teamwork is really what can stand us apart from other teams who are doing the same thing or similar things as we do. Patrick Lencioni has a great model. It was interesting, the question about trust in the previous talk, because from my side, I discovered all those things from my own experience. And what my experience was working on the trust level in a team really helped me to implement those psychological safety in the team. So what he said, he has a model. Trust is the base layer. And if there is trust, there is more room or more space for respectful conflicts with each other. If there are more healthy conflicts in teams, then there is more commitment from the team. There is more accountability, and in the end, it ends up in delivering results. But if the base layer trust is not there, then of course it's difficult to do all the other things, to discuss things openly together, to have conflicts with each other, etc. So I thought, okay, this is interesting. So instead of working on project plans, I was thinking, okay, I have to build more trust in the teams I'm working with. So yeah, I can see you thinking, okay, it sounds great, but okay, how do you do this? So how do you do this? What I also discovered, I was really looking for something magical. I thought, okay, at one day I will read something and this will solve all my problems. But of course, there is no magical solution for this. It's really a set of small and consistent actions. So that's also something I see in organizations. They implement a one-day training or a one-day coaching, and they expect that the team will change one day to the other, but this is rarely the case. So it's really implementing a set of consistent actions, and I also always prefer to work on small actions instead of doing big bang approaches in one day. So how? So in the upcoming slides, I will give you some practical examples, what I did and what I try to do in the teams I'm working with, what I still do today in my job. It's just some tips I've chosen for this evening. Of course, there is many more things that you can do, but I have chosen to present you some small things, some practical things that you can implement as from tomorrow. So what I often see, build personal connection with the people in your team, because sometimes if I ask to people, okay, do you know the hobbies of your colleague? Do you know what your colleague was doing last weekend? Do you know the favorite food of your colleague or the name of his or her children? What are you curious to know about your colleague? Are you really curious to know something more about next to the technical skills or next to the programming language that's his or her favorite? Do you know something else about that person? Because by asking those small questions, it can really help to build personal connection, not only focusing on, okay, let's do our job and let's write lines of code, but really, okay, do you know some other things? Of course, you don't need to ask his or her whole life, of course, but those small things can really help to build personal connections. And do you dare to ask that? Are you really curious to ask questions about the colleague you're daily working with? Also, as a project manager, when I did meetings, I immediately started with with an agenda, like, okay, what is going on for this customer and what is going on in this project, etc. But then I changed by doing like a check-in. And a check-in, it can feel strange in the beginning to implement this if you are used to doing like technical meetings or status meetings or things like that. But sometimes asking like, how are you doing? And then asking a second question, how are you really doing, is like a small thing that you can show your colleagues that you are really interested in knowing how are they doing, instead of going immediately into the agenda of the technical agenda of the meeting. Over communication is not possible. I always thought, okay, I already said that last week, I will not repeat that again, or I will not elaborate on that. But I figured out, okay, the more you communicate, the more you can connect with your colleagues, and the more that you can make sure that people understand what you mean, or that people can understand the expectations. Because sometimes we think that people understand, but if you and we think, okay, it will become too much if I repeat it again, but it's never too much. And also, what I often see is that, it's a bit strange in the beginning if you manage IT projects, or if you're working in IT projects, you don't even need to be the project manager or something like that. To also organize sessions, workshops, discussions, whatever it is called, with the focus at the team level instead of the project or the product level. And start small. So as I said earlier, it's not necessary to organize a whole day session, but it can be something really small with discussion at the team level. Like you said, the manifesto, what kind of behavior do we expect in this team, or how will we work together, etc. To also create expectations and discussions like that. And not only like, okay, what kind of milestones do we need to deliver? And as a leader, you go first. Start with sharing your own vulnerabilities. It's difficult to expect it from other people if you don't show it yourself as well. So as a leader, it's a bit, you set the stage for your colleagues as well. And start with sharing something from yourself. It can be a small failure, or it can be, and of course, it's also not the case that you need to share like everything into every detail, but some small things can create some openings for other people to share things as well. And take the time to actively listen. And when I discovered what actively listening is, I also discovered this is really an underrated skill in organizations. In a lot of meetings, you are often already with answers in your head, and you already are ready to reply to things that other colleagues are saying. But actively listening is really like an underrated skill, and it's really important to show to people that you listen to them, that you hear them, that you are not only listen to reply, but also listen to really figure out, okay, what's going on there? And also that you listen not only to the words, what they are saying, but also at a deeper level. Do you listen to what they are not saying? Or do you feel what is said between the lines? So that's really important. It's easy to say, but it's really difficult to master this skill. So taking the time to actively listen is really an underrated skill in also technology teams, because everything needs to go fast and fast and fast. Sometimes we forget to do this. And of course, we all have struggles, but if you can reach the level to discuss this openly as a team, then you will see the results. In technology, everything is going fast. Deadlines are there every day. There is never time. So that's often a thing that I hear when I'm doing coaching with IT teams. Yeah, we don't have the time to do this. We need to deliver. We need to catch our deadlines, etc. But what if you would be the leader who creates the space and the time to discuss struggles, people, aspects, things together? And again, start small, because sometimes I see that people become afraid, okay, but we will not discuss half of the week, things like this, but we also need to write our lines of code, etc. But yeah, if you are the one who creates space and time to discuss, I'm really confident that you will see the results in your end product as well. Trust other people. What I also see, that's also of course easy to say, but I see that the default mindset is often the opposite. Okay, what if my colleague is doing something wrong, or what if this person is not doing what I expect? Often our default mindset is the opposite. But what if our default mindset would be, okay, I trust my colleague, and it can be that this person will make some errors or things like that. But what if your default mindset would really be like, okay, I'm trust, based on trust instead of based on fear, anxiousness, etc. That's also already something that Niels said. It's not about being nice, and there I can also share something from my own experience. Also in my 20s, when I was doing my first role as a project manager, at one day my boss told me, Elke, you are too nice. And I was really like, okay, what's going on? Because I thought, okay, if I ask very nice to my colleagues if they can do this or that, then they will make it happen. So that was really for me the biggest eye-opener in my career, that it's not about being nice, that you will create trust. So it's really about welcoming different ideas with kindness, about respectful conflicts, but not always about being nice and being friendly if you feel something else. So if you feel, okay, there is something and I want to say to this colleague, yeah, it's not about being nice. So it was even in the newspaper last week. Sorry, it's in Dutch because I don't like to translate other words or other sentences in newspapers. But last week, Frederik Ansel wrote a whole article in the Tate about psychological safety. So in the context of this evening, it's really valuable to look it up because it was a large article. But here he also said, and that's also what Neil already said, that psychological safety is not about being nice to each other, but it's really like, okay, opening the space to create like respectful conflicts about ideas that are not necessarily the same, that can conflict with each other, but that you can discuss this openly together. Discuss the difficult topics, because personally, if people say, okay, yeah, everything is going to be all right, everything ends up well, yeah, I don't trust people who say that, because of it's certainly in technology projects, in every stage at the project, there can be something that can go wrong. There are a lot of challenges, so dare to discuss difficult topics, and I'm quite confident that you will deliver better products then. So thank you. Do you have questions?